recording whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Francesca. Thanks so much for in the invitation. Excited to share what we've been up to at Relay2. So, in a nutshell, the focus of Relay2, both as a company and also what we'll be covering today, is helping sales people transform their most popular go-to mechanism for communicating with customers, which is the opposite of AI. Right now, it's actually in the pre-internet world, and it's things like PowerPoints and PDFs, which have been, as you know, PowerPoint has been around since before the World Wide Web. So the big question that we believe remains to be tackled, and would love to share some experiences today, is how can you use AI to move the medium that the buyers see, which is, again, data sheets, sales presentations, proposals. Could be, if it's earlier in the marketing part of the journey, could be more educational and attention grabbing marketing resources. But in the B2B world, a lot of that content tends to be static content. Does that sound like an interesting topic for your audience, Francesca?
Absolutely. That sounds great. I think the sales and marketing teams have been in two separate silos, and I think content is really super valuable for sales teams. So I'm really looking forward to jumping right in.
Perfect. Well, before you take my word for everything that I say, I want to kind of share what's unique about our approach, and also just why you should listen up. This is not us saying that we understand this world. This is actually a validation from G2, which takes reviews of customers. And as you could see here, there's some categories listed. And some of these are kind of in the content world, in the design world, like presentations, which you would think of like, what's kind of next gen presentation, content creation, and so on. Some of them are clearly more in the marketing world, like content curation. But the ones that, are really emerging for us as a key area is digital sales rooms, demo automations. We actually are just, this is a little bit out of date. We're momentum leader in sales enablement, proposal software, and so on. So we need to update the documentation. But the big idea is that this is actually really applied, and a lot of what you see is actually live and getting results. I mean, from an industry recognition perspective, it's also, winning generative and applied AI awards and MIT AI Idol competitions and so on. But I think that's less impressive in our view than the big idea. And so what's the big idea to come back to is, well, look, we all kind of understand that PDFs and presentations aren't exactly the things that are going to inspire your customers. They're more likely the things that will suck the life out of any meeting or any kind of virtual consumption. And so the alternative everybody thinks is, well, let's go build a website. Let's go build a bunch of,
Data Disney winners and losers.
Sorry.
It is interactive. So the alternative is like, let's go build websites. And there's some fundamental problems that we'll address to in a second, was why sales teams and even some marketing teams that support sales directly have a hard time building custom websites, either for mini vertical, for an event, for a particular customer, for a particular proposal experience, and really high stakes situations, because those solutions tend to be templatized, and they, at the end, if you do end up kind of creating some sort of a folder style web experience, it ends up, you still like shove that folder with a bunch of static PDFs and presentations. So it's still kind of, you come back to the same old thing. So like engaging, compelling websites that move and excite and educate the buyers are not easy to come by. And so what we want to propose, based on combination of some applied AI that's not generative and generative AI, a set of ways in which you could take an existing content and transform it. And let's just start with an example of a presentation. So this is actually one of those AI powered presentations, right? And you could see I could navigate to some of the things that you could do in transforming the content and why you would want to do them. So the very first thing is, when let's say you drag and drop your PDF or PowerPoint, you can immediately, and AI will recommend the best one. You could create a viewing experience that is going to be compelling. So for example, imagine something is really designed to be scrolled through versus something that is designed to be, a flip type of experience that's like really like a book, or a more traditional document, and so on. So first thing is, you could generate immediately the types of views that are proven to engage with your audience. The second, based on the type of content that you have, right? And not all content is the same, right? So not everything is a presentation that you would share with a customer. So just because you have some AI presentation thing doesn't solve problems in a real B2B context. The other thing is, the moment you move something in a PDF, it immediately becomes static, right? Like, so you could have the coolest looking PowerPoint or Google slide that some fancy people designed, but to share it with a customer, guess what? You save it as a PDF to avoid various formatting issues, and boom, it doesn't move. So here's a way to take your content, look at it, and automatically figure out a pleasant animation that is going to create a easier consumption experience. And our brains are crocodile brains. So here we could actually leverage the fact that crocodile brains need to pay attention to things that are moving, and hopefully draw attention to the types of things that matter to you. Again, you can do it in one click, and you could tweak it afterwards, but the idea is that one click allows you to animate something that normally would take a lot of skills that sales teams don't have. I mean, they'll come up with like Frankenstein animations. The other one is, imagine you have beautiful brand content, or just something that's really inspiring. You're talking about environment. Don't you want to have an environmental video that creates a sense of emotional connection? And so you could drag and drop underneath your text a video, right? And right now we can actually recommend those automatically. And that video will be animated and create an engaging experience. So if I play this button again, it's just like literally this is a one click. I could add a custom video, but now there's a library of recommended videos. The next thing I want to cover, what would improve the consumer experience, is ability to navigate through a large document. So when I upload something, I can actually immediately get a navigation. You can see across the top there, that looks at this document. It actually uses ChatGPT to analyze the text inside and can recommend proper titles. If there are other indicators, like you could spot, like on page 3, there's typically like a tables of contents. It actually could look at that table of content, takes exact words from that and put it in. So it's a pretty smart combination of AI working together with heuristics-based algorithms, where whichever one delivers better outcomes, to actually build a navigation. And then you could tweak it, right, with a no-code solution. But the idea here is the client get to care to the parts they care about, right? If you're selling complex content, the worst thing you could do is lead everybody through a monologue, because IT people need to get to the IT part. Decision makers need to get to some things that are more focused for them. Some specialists in security need their material. So everybody could find their content. The last piece, of course, is now this is no longer a static kind of paper first analog PDF that disappears into a black box. You actually understand what's going on, who looks at what. You can start getting automatic recommendations on how to improve either individual documents or all of your content. And this is really exciting. This is sort of the, now you've kind of, let's say you've created this using AI, you've created this much more consumable experience. And let's say you uploaded 5 slide decks and 14 case studies and some white papers. You could actually read all of that content through a chat bot that's approved, that only will look at that content, so out of the box. And you could ask it questions, right? Tell me either something about this particular document that I'm looking at right now, or the entire collection. and you will get, suggested answers. And these answers, they're going to be pointing you, not just providing a text, which is good, right? But they will actually point you to the specific pages in a specific document that will answer your immediate question. Imagine this is like stuff salespeople don't know half the time, right? Like specialists barely know. And now you can expose it to them so they look like they're rock stars in front of the customer. And then you could actually also empower some B2B buyers or your partners that need to be experts in your solution without a lot of time to use this content chat to get to specific pages. And when you get to that page, remember, you still have navigation, you have all those other beautiful things in there. So I'll pause here for a second, and ask you, Francesca, what were you thinking as you were looking at this?
Oh, well, I love the chatbot feature because often when you create a presentation, you'll have the script and you go through the script and you did deliver the same thing and again, and it becomes less and less like animated and you're kind of going on autopilot. But instead, you're having more of a conversation with customers. They can ask questions. You can use your chatbot to then navigate to that page or this page and then, dynamically answer whatever they're interested in. So I think that's fantastic. So is the chatbot accessible only to the sales team, or is it accessible to, can you kind of like switch it on and off in terms of who it's accessible to?
Great question. Great question. So yeah, every document you could choose, hey, I want this chat to be on for this or not. That's number one. So you have a choice, very granular choice. And then this is the beauty of it, right? Like, so sometimes this is a internal sales site, right? And you just you're launching a new product. Great example, right? Like happens all the time. You're launching a new product, like salespeople are busy. They just want some very specific things. Hey, is there examples of this product in insurance? Because I'm focused on insurance, right? Boom. I find out of the of whatever they're launching, I find the insurance examples. I can go, amazing. I have an insurance client. I need to close that client. Boom. That's sort of sales. That's confidential, right? Like you could point and say, hey, this page is ready to share with the client. This is not. So that's kind of one use case. I think eventually the world will have to catch up on this, right? Like there are some kind of sales enablement systems that at least large organizations have that, if they are worth anything, they'll have to figure this out. Otherwise, they're just a waste of a lot of money and resources. I think what nobody has really done so far is really brought that capability to the customer, right? And I think that is amazing in the world of product-led or product-guided sales, which is where a lot of even enterprise sales are moving towards, like, hey, experience the product, experience the product tour, which is something we do, for example, as well. Experience, read it for yourself. So you empower, the buyers, whether they're like, they want a snapshot in 2 pages, or they want that's engaging, or they want the full specific answers to understand how your solution is relevant to them. And so you could put together a buyer specific room where you could start asking that chat a question, right? You could put that in an industry specific solution set, right? That like an industry marketer or account-based marketer will work closely with a sales team to create that for an account or for a particular offering or solution. And I think that is really changing the dynamic, because it's one thing, oh, okay, I have some sort of chatbot that kind of answers some support questions, right? But here you're actually landing into the source, right? And so if you're in like selling to life sciences, for example, right? In life sciences, people need evidence, right? But they don't want to look through your fancy sales spiel, but they're scientific people and they kind of like, okay, in 2 minutes, I understood that this is like substantive. I looked at the supporting evidence. I believe in that. Boom. This is a go, right? So this is sort of what we see. Some customers are going to be very much gravitating towards this type of consumption. And it doesn't matter that I don't think everybody needs to do it, right? Because you could create an engaging customer experience for example, through AI powered navigation, right? That we talked about earlier. So I think chatbot navigation, immersively embedded videos that are kind of automatically generated from links, right? Like these are all basically telling to the client or a salesperson, but like let's say to the client, because ultimately the main job of the sales content is to engage the client, not to engage the salespeople, right? It's telling you you're unique. You have specific questions. You have specific learning styles. You prefer to consume video content. Great. Here's in the area that you care about. Here's a video of a real customer
Yeah,
talking.
no, I like what you're saying then, because I think we're moving from a world that's very like linear. Here is the story, and you have to like go through the presentation in that way. And instead, people can kind of jump around, and people are used to that. You know, they're watching TV, they're on their mobile phones, they're on their iPads, they're used to jumping from one thing to the next. And as you say, you know, some customers will respond to the hard facts and the evidence if they're in, you know, life sciences or insurance. Others will be more emotionally driven, and that they want a really good brand story, and some of those more emotive pieces.
Yeah.
Others will be driven by, you know, the price, and oh, there's, you know, a deadline on this deal. So depending on who your audience is, you can kind of, by having those you know, asking questions on the fly, you can really switch to the right slide. So I really love that. Could you tell me a little bit about, you know, does the sales team need to be live at the time with this presentation? What happens if, you know, you are instead going to get rid of your website, and maybe you're going to, you know, sell things via social media? People are on social media, they click on something, they go to the presentation. You know, could a sales team then see, oh, this person is actually reading the presentation, and then jump in and then say, oh, by the way, you know, I'm here, I'm live, I can actually, in addition to the AI chatbot, I can also answer your questions.
Great question. So just so you understand, like this is a live example, like the what I just shared with you is actually one of our digital rooms put together. This complements our website. So we have a website. It's, you know, the front end of it is built with another no-code platform called Webflow, which is very popular for kind of high-end but still flexible websites. But for us to, like, when this AI solution came out, like we didn't know what we're doing. We're changing it all the time, you know, how to explain it better. And so we basically used Relay2. And so now you're seeing this, you could find a link to some of this in our website, but this is the room, and it has a, you know, our AI presentation that I went through, but I could go into specific demos, right?
Oh, wow.
And say, hey, do I want to watch a video demo? Do I want, like, am I more like an API type of person? And I want to like see, like, how can AI just automatically transform something as an API? And so I could say, well, you know, some of the same materials that we saw, right? You could see, hey, that's that navigation. This is automatically generated, so I could, you know, this is clickable, etc. So I could find,
because people don't scroll down a website anymore. So this is as much like a transformation of UX than anything else. And lots of people have said that generative AI is a UX revolution. People are using text prompts, or they are, you know, they're going to be using these chatbots. And so I think that's great what you're creating.
So I think what our take is it's going to be evolutionary, right? So a lot of focus so far has been on generating stuff, right? And to generate stuff, you do prompts as kind of an innovative thing. Hey, I don't no longer need to learn some sort of an app, right? I'm going to ask Adobe to, you know, design something for me. You know, I think it's to be seen how that will work for sophisticated users versus kind of democratizing. But I think this unleashes a ton of prompt-based innovation, but it's all focused on generative stuff. I think the real interesting ROI does not come from like, oh, let me create another spammy looking but pseudo personalized chat GPT email that, you know, a bunch of people are working on right now, right? I don't think that's
Mhm.
ultimately gonna make our customers trust us that much, you know, because eventually, like, everybody learns to spot these, right? Like, it's just kind of a
Yeah.
matching thing, and you know, little things give it away. Like, I get, oh, you know, when because of my LinkedIn has my full company name, they'll just kind of relate to content experience platform, blah blah, or they put the wrong the other, like, anyway, the point is people spot some of this automated
Yeah.
stuff. And I think what we're trying to say is, okay, great. So you're able to produce more content. Now, how can, if you could only spend a little bit more time and
Mhm.
reflection on how to make this about your audience and less about your content, right? Like, because,
Yeah.
you know, Shakespeare has been around forever, right? It doesn't make all of us amazing Shakespearean, you know, actors, right? Like, so content itself is not the thing. You're creating an experience that moves somebody, that creates an awareness and desire to solve a problem, reduces friction from doing that, right? That is very different than, you know, let me spam the daylights out of you with pseudo experiences, right? So that's
Mhm.
kind of what I think we believe. So if you, we call it interactive AI. And I think you
Mhm.
could kind of call the chatbot is an element of it, right? Like, I showed you
Mhm.
the chatbot that we're using that's all about consumption. But I think a lot of it is, hey, can I just have these like automatically beautiful videos that actually fit into the story and align with the brand versus some made up things, right? So that's a very different thing, something that salespeople are not quite frankly capable of doing, because that's just not the strength of an average salesperson. Is, you know, they are not going to be good curators of generative AI when it comes to design. Maybe text, but definitely not, you know, you need to have good taste to determine what's good or not. And so marketers better, but like sometimes marketers, you know the message really well, but like they're not necessarily, all of them are designers, right? So can you empower the marketers, the salespeople to kind of take whatever, maybe you with some use of generative AI, but like focus on what does the customer see? You know,
Yeah, and just on that,
yeah.
talking about the marketing side, I'll let you go after this. Is there an opportunity of being able to embed that presentation in, say, a blog or something along those lines? So you've got the longer piece, but then maybe people don't want to read the long form blog, they just want to see your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we could even let's go find some examples. But look, short answer is like everything that you see and relate to is embeddable, right? So where can you embed it? What are the places where people embed it? So the most obvious is actually the website. So like you could go and, you know, you saw that example from Salesforce. So we're very fortunate that they're publicly using relate to. They believe in the vision. And so they have some things that are standalone, kind of like these sort of content hubs, and then some elements of them they embed in various other portions on their website, in their internal portals, like sales enablement portals, in their in their partner portals. So you can embed it there. And then the blog is a sort of a version of a website that where you basically, to your point, say, hey, some people are really visual, and some people like to scan through text. And typically, maybe not even presentation, sometimes infographics. So like you could take a static infographic that's maybe you spend a lot of time working on, because to simplify ideas to the essence actually is hard, right? It's you've worked on it, but guess what? That static infographic does not have a call to action. How sad is that, right? Like, I'm like, you know, it's just like, because it's an image, right? It's a JPEG.
Yeah, no, that's a shame. So are you saying that this could also be like updated in real time? Like, because I've done a
Absolutely.
bit of work with like data journalists, and I love news articles that are filled with infographics, but news gets old really quickly. And if you know, imagine if that could be updated.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's go into the real time, you know, real time demonstration of like how that, and that's the whole idea. Because in the deal cycle, right, like things change, right? Like this hub, you start with one document and then you want to add,
Prices will change all the time.
prices will change, positioning
Maybe
changes. Yeah,
the way.
so here you could see I actually have an edit button, and on my main page, I could just go and update the PDF. And what will happen is you'll keep the same URL, so the client doesn't have to worry about any of the issues was like, oh, something changed, right? Which is, as you know, was PDFs. The moment you send it, it's like, or images, they're out of date, right? And
Oh
then
God, yeah, that's always frustrating.
if you have some custom interactive things, for example, they will be automatically preserved. And just so you know, like what salespeople do, this is like if you want to do when I say custom, like I could add a whole library of call to actions and embed demos, whatever, Airtable, Google Sheets, you name it. I could put it all inside here. I could record a video of walking through this. We talked about the background and the eye animation. So this is a living, dynamic, breathing kind of website for sales, for customer success people. And the power of this is that it's not a single website, it's a hub, right? And so that hub could support multiple engagements with a particular customer, because again, the world of B2B is very different than the world of some consumer website who's a very simple pricing offer that's easy to understand, right? People need to find the relevant materials, configure, etc. And the value of the sales team becomes that they become the curators of great buying experience. And they could curate this in real time, right? Like the way I screen share it right now, like we have sales reps who don't do much creating, but they're like, they learn how to navigate, they have their story, they know how to emphasize immersive videos and so on. And so they love that. But you can curate it also in person, right? Where kind of like all the competitors in the competitive pitch show up and suck the life out of the audience was a same old PowerPoint, right? You could be doing the same thing, right? It would still feel relatively familiar, but you could navigate, you could make this more conversational and jump to the areas of either the presentation or the hub that customers ask about. That's the idea of a conversation, right? Like you asking me questions, I'm able to share something with you. It's the opposite of today, which is a linear monologue that people are forced to consume on the wrong device. And then the lastly is the self-serve, which is something like a really important question that you asked. And we believe this is fundamental because the power of self-serve is like if you start gating and requesting that somebody puts in their email, now what you have is you actually are providing valuable information, right? Like it's not just out there, right? Like it's sort of restricted to you. So people, oh, okay, well, this is restricted for a short period of time. It's not there to be shared with competitors of this company. It's clearly obvious, perceived that this is valuable. So that's a win for sales team. But then the sales team captures what we call digital body language. And that is like, we talked a little bit about that earlier. So it says, hey, this team is really interested in here. This person who we didn't know even actually, was in the sales cycle is the super most engaged person. And we need to understand what they're doing and why they're interested in, right? Like, because that kind of, they may be really influential. And so you start having much richer insight with the buyer permission about what really matters, right? And if you like, you're driving your deal, you could drive your forecast from that, right? Like, which is the sales managers really start caring about that. You could have much more informed preparation for the next meeting. And we think that is the smart way of taking what, right now is like, oh, well, we just send the leave behind, but really we think the meeting in person is really the most important thing. No, right? Like you can certainly control the meeting in person, but communication about you will happen one way or the other. And so you have a chance to shape that environment and know what's going on. And the lessons that we've had is that some clients thought they had everything down. They thought they were like, about to win a deal. And then really, they look at the related data and they're like, oops, great meeting in person. Nobody looked at anything afterwards. That's not a behavior of a buying customer that's serious about our offering. And then you have a chance to either change the game or kind of bail out and stop wasting resources and opportunities where you're not real participant. So I think this is really changing the dynamic, but it's starting with a place, and it's really important. You're starting was not like, how can I shove more information, get more stuff out there? You're starting was like, well, how do I create a pleasant, trust-based buying experience for the customer where we don't hide behind small print, but we also don't overwhelm you with stuff that may not be relevant. And if you
Yeah.
start as that, I think that's where AI is your friend. And if you
I
start
think
with like,
everyone's preaching the wrong messages at the moment. Everyone's saying, oh, ChatGPT is a magic bullet for marketeers. You can create your own ebooks and blogs and, personalized emails, and we're just going to be inundated with
it's gonna
so
be
much
inundated,
content
it's gonna be
overload.
yeah.
We're gonna learn how to filter it out, and the only way to stand out in that environment is not to do that, is to create, visually beautiful, less content, but beautiful interactive content that it stands out.
Stands out, or it's on demand, right? Like I think again, like too much, like it's amazing if it's there, right? And we support deal rooms and like huge things, right? Like you need that supporting evidence, but you don't, but you want to present it in a way that doesn't overwhelm the main message. That's the balance, and the technology can help. And I think you're right about this sort of this generative, like we got too caught up was a generative, like and let's go back to PowerPoint, right? Like one of the clear problems was the PowerPoint that everybody could relate to, is that it was actually, as a tool, it was designed to make it easy for people to generate bullets, right? It made this default thing was bullets, and we all started doing it. And the fact of the matter is, like, if you ask to any designer, like half the time you don't need the bullets, right? Like you could just, they're just adding noise, right? Like, so they maybe are important in writing, but definitely not in a visual communications, right? You don't like, it was not done for great design. It was done to make it easy for somebody to create a slide. And we're almost repeating that mistake, now, where we're going to go create a bunch of generative stuff because it's easy, versus start with the customer experience and then work backwards. And it's like, okay, to create an amazing customer experience, what do we need to generate for them, right? Which is sort of sounds obvious, but I think that's not how the technology is playing out. And so that's why we're calling it more interactive AI. And it needs to stand on the shoulders of generative, but it needs to have a different priority in mind. I think the priority of the creator, at the end of the day, people are not, some people are creating for the sake of creating, but they're artists, right? And they're not typically in the business roles and sales and marketing. If your marketers think their job is to create, I think you should fire that marketer, frankly. Their job is to not produce output, it's to produce an outcome.
Mhm.
And an outcome, long-term outcome, right? Trusted customer, that's going to be your champion, right? Like, moving somebody across the buyer journey, even if they're not a good fit, they'll recommend your solution to somebody else because you're easy to work with and you create, you care about them, right? So so you need to start with an outcome. And then you got to be very creative on how do you minimize the friction for a sales rep to create a great outcome, right? And that's where the AI does have a huge role. And that's what you've seen some examples of what we learned through a lot of experimentation of like, hey, this works with the customers. Now let's work backwards and say, hey, can we use different parts of AI, not just generative, right? There's other models that we could support in multimodal AI to say, hey, how do you create that type of experience? So hopefully that gives a little bit of a controversial take on what it takes. And I think you just need to, in sales, you need to probably fortunately have the best opportunity to be more outcome focused, right? Like, so that sort of is, the gain here is like, is this type of experience increasing win rates? And that's what we're seeing for our customers by 3x. Is this moving deals forward dramatically, right? Because you're now not requiring these extra touch points. You have good people. We have people are looking at the stuff on the weekends. CEOs are reviewing proposals on the weekends, right? Like, it's amazing. And they're digging in because they actually have more time. It's like, so that is another power changer. And then are you able to convey the value of what you're doing in a way that moves people? And that actually, does entice more of the understanding of the problem, feeling the problem, experiencing the pain, so that, that creates a broader, like from the very top, the marketing part of the journey, that creates a sense of hey, this is, those people, they picked me, they gave me an option of 5 pains. And I drilled into the pain that I really care about that makes me want to move this deal. That makes the whole trajectory of the opportunity move forward. So hopefully this gives a sense of what we see happening with AI across generative and creating these type of interactions.
Yes, super, super exciting. Thank you so much for walking us through your fantastic products. Great to see so many feature updates. And great to hear that, CEOs are even spending their weekends,
Looking at AI
looking at your
generated
presentation,
content,
spending
if it's done
hours
right.
and hours looking at your amazing interactive presentations. I love that.
Thanks, Francesca. Great job on creating a platform for innovative ideas. Thank you so much for doing it. It's much needed. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.